Hi, this is Eva from The Charm of It, and I'm here to unpack my knitting basket in another video podcast. You can also find me on Ravelry and Instagram under the username The Charm of It. There is a group for the podcast at Ravelry, which is also The Charm of It, and finally I have a blog, which is thecharmofit.wordpress.com. So pretty much that username is probably me. I'm most active, I'd say, on Instagram and Ravelry or blog comments, so I guess I'm active everywhere that I go. And of course, I would welcome if you want to chat with me. Feel free to join the group and start conversations, that kind of thing. This week, one of our group members, Susan, has a question about knitting sweaters for dogs and how to keep the neck ribbing tight and make sure it doesn't stretch out, but at the same time not impedes the dog's range of motion. So if you have any experience with knitting sweaters for animals or any good ribbing techniques, feel free to stop by and share them. She started a thread for that. Oh, and here's one of my co-hosts, Moth. This is my cat. My other pet is Thistle, my dog, who is in my lap at the moment. You just can't see her. There she is. They both consider podcast time as, lap time, perfect lap time. So they tend to poke their heads up now and then. I am drinking hot chocolate. I made another batch of the hot chocolate paste from the Violently Domestic blog, and I really like it. It has made hot chocolate pretty much a daily treat for me, which is nice. And I am wearing A Pinch of Nutmeg shawl, which is appropriate since I use nutmeg instead of cinnamon in the hot chocolate paste. I prefer nutmeg. I'm not a big cinnamon person. I don't mind it in combinations, like chai, but I'm never going to use cinnamon on its own as a flavoring. And I get really sad when it's the overpowering flavor in something like chai or pumpkin pies. Not that that matters. So this is my Pinch of Nutmeg shawl. I knit it a couple months ago out of Road to China Light, which is a luxury yarn from the Fiber Company. It's a blend of baby alpaca, silk, and cashmere, I believe. Maybe some camel too, baby camel. I can't quite remember. This is the Smoky Quartz colorway, which is a dark brown. I've noticed that now that I have a couple big knitted neckwear things, this took I think 3 skeins, and then I also have a really big cowl. They pretty much function as cardigan substitutes for me. They keep me as warm as the cardigan. So that's why I've paired it with just a silk blouse instead of another sweater. Plus it's not super cold today. It's in, I think, the high 30s, low 40s. So that's what, 1 to 5 for my Celsius friends. And I believe that that is all of the business. Oh, I am running a giveaway for 2 skeins, which is 100 grams of Knit Picks Felici yarn in the Gummy Bear colorway. And if you would like to be entered for the giveaway, all you need to do is go to the Ravelry group and tell me about some kind of resolution or plan or fibery interest you want to explore in 2016. You don't have to be a member of the group. If you know about the giveaway, clearly you watch the podcast, so really either way works for me. And thank you to everyone who has told me about their plans. It's kind of killing me that I can't reply since that would mess up Random Number Generator. So I think that once I've done the Random Number Generator, I'm totally going to go back through and reply to everyone because there's so much interesting things to read and discuss there. So the giveaway will be open for 1 more week. I will draw next Saturday and then get that mailed to you at some point. I'm not very good at getting to the post office in a timely manner, but my sister and niece, their birthdays are in early February, so I'll be mailing out their birthday gifts, so that should be enough incentive. Just combine it in one big trip. So I don't have any quick questions to answer from the Ravelry group. The questions I have gotten are about combining reading and knitting, which is big enough for me to do it as a topic, not a quick question, which I'll probably be doing next time. This week's topic is going to be building a wardrobe, basically, because I've mentioned before that I tend to choose colors that will go with my closet and that kind of stuff. And a few people have expressed curiosity about how I got to that point. So I'll talk about that a little later. First, let's talk about the knitting. I don't have any finished objects. I think this might be the first video, but I'm trying to embrace slower knitting, and so I didn't see the point of hurrying up and finishing my leg warmers, which are close to being done, just for the sake of the podcast. So we will move right into works in progress after I take a hot chocolate break. First up is my Castles in the Air shawl, which is knit in Quince & Company's Piper. It's a 50% mohair, 50% merino blend. It's gloriously soft. It's made entirely from Texan animals, which I think is pretty fabulous. And it's a heavy lace weight single ply, but I am holding it double for the shawl so that it's more of a sport weight. And this is Abilene, which is a gray color. So last week I showed it to you, and I was talking about how I was having some problems with rippling. So I was going to block it and see if that fixed it, and if not, then I was going to rip it and re-knit the main body. But it turns out that blocking did fix it, and so I went straight to the next section, which is lace and beads. Ooh, I love how sparkly the beads are. I did not expect just how slowly I would be knitting this. Oh, come on. Okay. I've adjusted the focus box on my camera to be smaller, and that seems to work better at helping the camera know when to focus on knitting versus my face, so hopefully it won't take too long to transition back and forth between them. But as I was saying, the bead rows, there are usually 2 beads each section. In the very first row, there were 3 beads, and that took forever. But I'm using the dental floss method, and it takes me about 40-45 minutes to get through the knit side rows, which all have beads as well as lace. I'm in awe of people who knit shawls frequently because I'm not used to having to spend that long on one row. The nice thing is the purl rows are rest rows, so I can finish 2 rows in about an hour. And so I'm just embracing the slowness of it. I really, really like the final result of the beads and how sparkly they are. I'm using, they're clear, but they're silver foil lined. And they're the ones that the pattern recommends, which I believe they're triangular, they're not round, and I believe they're size 5. So they're pretty big. I got them on Etsy, and I just opened my second bag. I just cut out a little bit of me trying to convince my camera that it should move the focus back to my face. But as I was saying, I'm knitting it, the main body was on size 6s, and then this part is on size 7s, which is what the pattern suggests. I think my yarn is a little bit heavier than what she called for, so it kind of balances out the fact that I tend to be a loose knitter. The pattern is the Mustard Seed Shawl by Boone Knits. It's a paid-for pattern, and I really love it. It's fully charted as well as written out directions. And she's answered, it's a very easy to follow pattern, and I would definitely knit more of her shawl patterns when I wanted to treat myself to a paid-for pattern. She does really great themes, like the Mustard Seed Shawl is part of quite a few shawls that she's done inspired by A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. So yeah, I would definitely recommend her if you're looking for beginner shawl-friendly patterns. And I'm really enjoying the final result. I did do one extra repeat of the body to make it a bit bigger. And it's so big now, and this is pre-blocking. Woo! I've got about 14 rows left of the lace, and then I move on to the border chart, which I think is just a few rows. So hopefully it won't be too big. I'm new to shawl knitting, so I'm still kind of learning. I haven't made enough projects yet to know what's going to happen, if that makes sense. So we will see. Also in my basket is a new work in progress. As I mentioned during the last episode, my gift knitting season does not end with Christmas because I have quite a few loved ones with February birthdays. And so I decided to cast on some gift knitting. The first one is actually not for a February birthday. It is for Sister Grace, who is my great-great aunt. She is in her 90s, and she has been a nun since she was 18, and now she lives in a rest home for nuns. I don't know if they're all from the same order, but I visited her for the first time this summer, and even though she's in a rest home, she still makes rosaries and she beads them and that kind of thing. So I knew that she was interested in handwork, so I brought my current knitting project, which was a shawl made out of Elsa wool Cormo, which is delicious yarn, to show her. And she's pretty much blind, but she's very tactile, and she loved this shawl. She loved playing with it, and she loved playing with the yarn cake that I brought. So I ended up gifting her the shawl because she mentioned that she's always cold. And she had also mentioned that her hands were always cold, and since she loved that yarn cake so much and playing with it, I thought it would be really cool to make her a thrummed muff, which I know, I wish there was a better name for that, but one of the tubes that you can put your hands into, because since she's still making rosaries, mittens wouldn't really be as functional indoors. And so my mom thought this was a great idea too. And when I was with her down in Texas and we went to the local yarn store, we picked up, well, she paid for some yarn and fiber so that I could make the muff. So the yarn it was from the clearance section, and it is Barocco Kodiak, which is a baby alpaca nylon blend, and it's super soft and fluffy. And it's a chunky yarn. The label recommends a size 10.5 needle. I've never knit with chunky yarn before. The heaviest I've knit with is worsted. I don't have size 10.5 needles, so I'm just knitting with my 9s and making it even more loose than my usual knitting style. And then the fiber is just some plain cream merino. It's undyed, that we picked up. We got 4 ounces of it, but so far this is the first ounce, and I haven't even gotten through all of it. Yeah, we picked it because it was super soft and cozy. So here is what I have so far. I'm following a pattern from, it's like a farm website. You can see it on my projects page. It's a free pattern, and basically it has you knit it flat, which at first I thought was kind of silly, but then I realized that with the thrumming, it was harder to tell how much space you need inside for your hands to be comfortable. And so this way you just keep knitting until it's the right diameter for you, so you cast on for the width you want. And that has worked out really great. I'm using the Yarn Harlots tutorial for thrumming, which I've never done before, and I definitely had to rip back the first row a couple times, but then I figured it out. And here is the back. So it is super soft and cuddly. Ooh, look at all that merino. And I really like how the front has the cute little V's. Lie stitch patterns, which are the kind of polka dot Fair Isle ones, are some of my favorite stranded knitting patterns, so I'm really enjoying this. And since it's chunky yarn, it is knitting up super, super quickly. I just cast it on yesterday, and I'd say I'm at least halfway done based on my measurement. So then the last thing you do is you can see you're knitting a little plain border here. I apologize. It's probably the alpaca, even though I love wearing alpaca. Whenever I'm showing you guys alpaca, my nose always seems to protest. So in the pattern, it has you basically fold this over and seam it. I'm going to wait and see because it's already rolling, and it actually makes a really nice finished edge as it is. So I will see whether I want to seam it or just leave it rolled. And hopefully I can get that out in the mail pretty soon. I wanted to cast this on now, even though it's not like a birthday deadline or anything like that, but it's winter right now, and her rest home is in Buffalo, New York, so it is very chilly in the winters, and so I thought it would be better to get this to her sooner rather than later, because it'd be kind of silly to send it to her right when summer started. And that's been kind of my rest knitting. It's very addictive because you do the thrum pattern every 4 rows, so you want to see what it looks like again and that kind of stuff. And here are my cute little loops. I put an Instagram photo up because I just thought they were adorable. So let's see what else. I guess I will show you guys my folksy leg warmers, which are almost done. So last week, I believe I finished the first one and just cast on for the second one. And now I'm almost done with the top. Whoops, just dropped a needle, but not the one that's in the pattern. I'm almost done with the second one. So I just have, I think, like 10 more rounds of ribbing and the cast off to complete. I'm using a free pattern from Tiny Owl Knits. It's called Cloudy Day Leg Warmers. And basically, I'm using it for the stitch pattern, which is a very pretty, very simple lace. But the pattern just has you cast on one amount of stitches and knit a tube, whereas my ankles are much smaller than my calves, so I added some calf shaping. Oh, Moth has decided that the little yarn butterfly at the end might be a toy. She's actually really good about not getting into my knitting, which is why I can keep everything in a basket instead of in project bags. But apparently that was a little too tempting. But as you can see, I just did sets of increases and then decreases. And I did a nice long ribbing at the top so that I have more options on how to wear them. I have never knit leg warmers before, but I think they'd be really helpful because I have a couple pairs of woolen knee-high socks and I really love wearing them under my boots come winter. So this is out of Elsa Wool Cormo in her worsted sport weight. I believe this is either the medium or the dark gray, but I think it's the medium gray. She only sells undyed yarn, and her yarns are just such a treat. Since it's a 2-ply spin and it's very soft yarn, that's why I decided to do leg warmers instead of full-on socks. So there will be a bit less friction involved, and I've got plenty of pairs of knitted socks that I can wear over them. And these I'm especially looking forward to wearing with the pink skirt that I've almost finished sewing. All I have to do is hand stitch the hem, but it is a full skirt, so that's going to take a couple hours, and I just haven't bothered to do it. So try really hard to do that so I can show them as one finished object, or well as, you know, a pair next week. But we will see. I'm going to have to take a quick break because I need to, you know, start another clip since my camera only does 9-minute clips, and I will tell you about my last work in progress. So the last work in progress is another gift knit, and this is for my sister. She really loved the colorwork mitts that I sent my niece, the snowflake ones, and so I offered to make her a pair for herself for her birthday. And when I was visiting her, we went to a local yarn shop, a different one than the one near my mom's house, and they didn't have a great selection for what we were looking for, but my sister finally found this yarn that she really liked, and it is a lace weight. It is Mirasol, I believe. Hang on. No, I can't find my phone. Okay, I know it's like 40% silk, 40% wool, and 20% bamboo. It is Mirasol yarn Nuna Fina. And yes, okay. And then the colors are Midnight is the purple, and then the other one is just their white, which is a very white, so I'm guessing it's been bleached. And they're 50 grams, so they're a little over 300 yards each. And I said, oh yeah, that'll be fine for mitts, because in my mind I was picturing, you know, like here up for mitts. And I figured that whatever colorwork pattern my sister picked, it would be an easy repeat one so that it would be easy for me to add a few stitches. Can you see where this is going? I should really get gift recipients to decide a pattern before we pick yarn, because first of all, my sister would like them to be up to about here, which, I mean, I'm happy knitting that much, and what she wants is to be able to wear them to keep the sun off of her forearms when she's driving, because she has a really long commute and the Texan sun is brutal, and she's a dermatologist, so sun protection is high on her list. So I'm perfectly happy knitting them, but the problem with doing much longer ones is that then you have to add shaping. because obviously forearms are much larger than wrists. My sister sent me her measurements, and it's almost double, really. And so that can be a bit tricky, especially since it's lace weight yarn, not fingering. And then for the pattern that she ended up deciding is this pattern called Starry Night Mittens, which is basically an adaptation of Van Gogh's painting into stranded color work. So as you can imagine, the chart is not exactly pro modifications. It's not like, there's like a 6-stitch repeat and you can add a couple more in, or there's some blank spaces where you can, add or remove a few stitches. Nope, you pretty much need to knit the chart as written. So what I ended up doing is there are little side seams, obviously, to the chart, and I just added more at the side seams. So right now I've got 7-stitch pinstripe side seams, and every 5 centimeters or so, my sister sent me her measurements in centimeters, so apparently we're going to think in centimeters for this project. I will be decreasing 2 stitches from the seams and also going down a needle size, so that by the time I get to the wrist, I will be at the stitch count that the chart suggests, and it should fit her wrist. So that's the plan, and here's what I have so far, just little baby knitting. It took me, I caked the yarn up, I believe, on Thursday, and that took a while because obviously I had to cake like 600 yards, and I do it all by hand. Oh, come on, camera. There we go. And so then I did a tubular cast on and 1x1 rib, and the purple is going to be the background. So that's why I did the ribbing in that, and then I've just started. And as you can see right now, I'm using size 2 needles, and it's definitely a loose fabric. There's the little pinstripe seams. But I think once I block it, it'll be good, and it fits her measurements. So that's my priority right now. So I probably have about, 4 more rows before I decrease my needles for the first time. And I really like the fabric. It's very nice and soft and light and drapey, which will be good because South Texas, you don't really need warmth a lot. I mean, let's face it, their hot season is way longer than their cold season, so these will get a lot of warmth. So after some initial mental hurdles where I was like, oh my gosh, these are never going to get done, once I started the color work chart, I just started flying through it because I find color work very addictive. I want to see how it's going to develop. I'm knitting these magic loop style. Usually I prefer DPNs, but when it comes to stranded color work, I like that magic loop only has 2 joins instead of 4 because I use 4 needles for my DPNs. And so yeah, that's why I've also done the 2 circular needle method. I go back and forth as to which one I like more, but in this case, my interchangeable needle set, I've only got 1 of, so that's why we're doing magic loop. These are the Diet Craft heavy metal needles. I really like them. And I knit the ribbing on 0s. So then switch to 2s, and we'll be headed back towards 0s going. So first I'll go to 1.5, then 1, and then finally 0 for the wrist and palm. The pattern is Starry Night Mittens. It's a paid for pattern. I have to say I'm not very impressed with the pattern. Essentially, it's the charts. And there's a little bit of information given for the ribbing of the mittens, but there's not even any information given for how to decrease at the top, which isn't an issue for me because I'm doing fingerless mitts. But so to me, if you're going to charge $6 for essentially charts, you should at least have the rounds numbered. I mean, I like it when there's numbers across both axes because that way I can count stitches too, but there's not even any round numbers. So basically it's just the graph. So I'm not super impressed. I would not probably buy from this designer again, although she has a lot of beautiful patterns. It's just, yeah, presentation-wise, I think it could do with a bit of work. But this was a gift. Almost all the patterns I buy tend to be for gifts because for myself, I usually end up just doing my own thing instead. And hopefully my sister will really like them. She's a big fan of the Starry Night painting, and so yeah. And then my final work in progress are my socks, the Loamy Field socks. And they're hanging out in my Knitsy, which was one of my Christmas gifts. I really love it. It's made in the US out of wood, and it is basically a DPN holder, which is apparently the wrong size for the camera to focus on. But I think mine is out of cherry wood, and oh my gosh, it smells so good. So it's really simple. All you do is you unscrew it, and both ends unscrew, and then all your needles are inside. And I asked for this for Christmas. I saw it on the Minerva Turkey Knits podcast because, as I've mentioned before, my favorite needles are my wooden Darn Pretty needles from Diet Craft, and they're not available right now because the wood suppliers for that company burned down, and they still haven't tracked down a new supply for the wood. So basically, if I break these, I'm out of luck. So I'm really pleased to have the Knitsy for their protection because I usually knit socks on size zeros. I haven't had any, like, these feel very firm to me. The first sock I knit on the Lantern Moon DPNs that I ordered, I think they're wood, but they were gray colored, and I've managed to break 2 of them now. They come with an extra one, so now I have 4. And I've decided that they will just be saved for fingers of gloves and other knitting. The first one I broke, it was my own fault. I was working on the heel gusset, and I decided to try on the sock, and so I had basically too many stitches on one needle, and so it snapped in the middle because the sock needed to bend in a place that the needle wouldn't let it bend. So I don't blame the needles for that. That was me being silly. But the second one broke when I was just doing a knit 2 together. And I don't think I gripped the needles particularly firmly. I don't know. I will admit that knit 2 togethers tend to be a little bit fussy for me, so I probably hold them a little bit tighter. But I mean, I've knit who knows how many pairs of socks on these needles, and they're completely straight and unbent. So that's okay. It was an experiment with the Lantern Moons, and I think they'll be really nice for knitting glove fingers because they are 5 inches instead of 6 inches. And 4 needles is perfectly fine for that. I prefer to do most of my circular knitting on 4 DPNs with a 5th going around because I just find that it puts less stress on the project. But for things like gloves, glove fingers, there just aren't that many stitches. So in that case, doing 3 and then a 4th to go around will be fine. That is my entire basket unpacked, so I have to start a new clip, and we will discuss the topic of the week, which is building a wardrobe. Okay, so of course I left my little notebook with my episode notes over on the couch, and both pets are sleeping on me, so I can't get up and get it. But basically, I've been interested in personal style and how to have a well-working closet and that kind of thing for quite a few years. So I did a lot of reading on the internet. In my early to mid-20s, I discovered thrift stores, and so that's when it became really possible for me to start to have a personal style. It was early 20s because my budget just couldn't stretch much beyond thrift stores, and also thrift stores tend to have much wider variety of cuts because they're not just what's latest in season at the moment. So basically what I did was I found a few excellent resources, and I will tell you about them in case you're also interested in that. So if you're interested in trying to figure out what colors work best for you, there's the seasonal color analysis, and the more recent update uses 12 seasons instead of 4, so there's a lot more space for nuance. And the site that I read about this on is called 12blueprints.com. I will include all these links in the show notes on my blog. And there are certain aspects of her rhetoric that are they're very kind of self-help, new age, empowerment kind of thing, so I kind of ignore that. But what I like is that basically they look at 3 different aspects of color. They look at whether something is muted or saturated, well, muted or bright, sorry. They look at whether something is muted or bright, they look at whether it's light or dark, and they look at whether a color is cool or warm. And of course, all of this is comparative. And basically, they feel that every person looks best in colors that match the same 3 aspects of this category. And so for me, it was very easy for me to tell once I'd read about this idea that bright colors overwhelmed me. If I put a bright color on and I close my eyes and I open them and look in the mirror, my eyes go to the shirt. They don't go to my face. So that's how I could tell that I was definitely in the muted category. And then the other main option, once you know that you're muted, is between warm and cool colors. And there's some warm colors that I can wear, but I look terrible in mustard yellow. Absolutely horrendous. So bad. So that decided me pretty quickly that I should be looking mainly at muted cool colors. And I use it more as a guideline than like strict rules. I never got officially draped or anything, and I don't have the official charts, but it just helps me when I'm looking at yarn or looking for clothes or that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things that I can rule out right away. And the other thing that I really like about this is that if most of your clothes have the same characteristics, in my case muted and cool, and then I can wear both lights, mediums, and darks, then it makes it really easy to mix and match clothes because a lot of the colors in my wardrobe just play really nicely together because they have quite a bit in common. So that would be what I would suggest if you're trying to decide what colors. And of course, if your favorite colors don't flatter you, but you want to wear your favorite colors anyway, then more power to you. I'm certainly not saying that everyone should follow this. I'm just letting you know what worked for me. And that was also very important for me because I have the kind of dark blonde, light brown hair that seems to only have insulting names attached to it. In English, that would be like mousy or dishwater blonde. I prefer mousy for the record because mice are kind of cute. There's nothing cute about dirty dishwater. I don't know why that's okay to call people's hair color that. Anyway, so once I figured out what colors suited me best, I became much happier about my natural hair colors. So I found it very empowering. And then the other thing that I looked at was trying to figure out what outfit silhouettes looked best on me. And it was pretty easy for me to see that I have strong shoulders. And so I balance poofy skirts really well, but only if they fit at my natural waist. Otherwise, I end up looking a bit off in proportions because I have quite a long torso. So breaking it up helps balance it more. And to do that, one of the books that I really liked was called The Triumph of Individual Style. I got it from the library. And it's written by basically art historians, and they talk about every possible aspect of your body and face and bone structure, and it's done in a way that is very positive, like they tell you how to either highlight or downplay everything rather than focusing on the traditional tall hourglass ideal in the US. And they talk about color as well. So that is a book that I would definitely recommend if you're trying to decide what you feel best in. But a lot of that, too, for me is not just what looks best on my body, but it's also what works best for my lifestyle. So I don't wear pencil skirts because I like to be able to walk freely. I stride. So that's important to me. And then and that's also a process of trial and error and whatever you feel best in. So my favorite silhouettes are full skirts with a tucked in top, and then skinnies with a looser top because usually you want to have volume on one side if you're doing tight on the other. And then lately I've also been adding wide-legged trousers with a more fitted top. So those are my favorite silhouettes. And there's a great series at the blog called Coletteri. Probably Coletteri. It's the blog run by the independent sewing pattern company Colette. And they did a wardrobe architect series where it basically talks you through, you pick out all of your favorites and you look at your closet now and you imagine your dream style and all that kind of stuff. And they have printable worksheets. I had already pretty much figured out my favorite styles at that point, but I still had fun following along, and I think it would be a great resource if you don't know where to start, because yeah, it's just a lot of information, and it's free, so I'll include that link as well. And I think they're doing, so they did the Wardrobe Architect series last year, and then this year I think they're doing more of a kind of, okay, now you've decided on your basic parameters, how do you put that into practice kind of approach this year. So that might be useful to some of you, especially if you sew better than me. And then the final resource I would mention is, so now you know the colors that you like and what shapes of clothing you like, but how do you know what to start adding to your closet, either by buying or by knitting or sewing or whatever. And it's another sewing resource, actually. I guess the sewing community must be big on wardrobe building, which makes sense because they can sew more types of clothing than I can knit. But it's called the Six Pack, and it's an acronym, PAC, and it was started by, I can't remember her name, but she is part of a sewing forum, and then she also has a blog, so I'll link to the blog where she describes it. But basically the idea is to sew 6 basics for every season, and she lays out what the basics are, and you sew them in specific neutral and color combinations, and then by the end of the year you have a wardrobe that it's basically your core wardrobe, and so then it's much easier to add things onto that. So obviously I didn't sew this, but I took the idea to heart of picking a couple neutrals and making sure that I had all of my most important pieces, like a full skirt, a pair of skinnies, a blouse, a cardigan, that kind of stuff, an A-line dress, in these neutrals, because then if I buy something in a fun color or knit something in a color, I have neutral pieces to pair with. So that worked really well for me. And my neutrals, they've expanded over the years because I really like clothes. But my neutrals are grays, obviously. And then, let's see, taupes, soft white, navy blue. And then I've just started adding some of the darker chocolate browns. When they're cool, I have found that they work, and I like the earthiness that they add. So I'm wearing actually a brown skirt to go with the shawl today, not that you can see it. And that, yeah, it basically means that I can wear like crazy colored trousers or, you know, a colorful scarf, and something will always pair with it. I'll be right back. And then vice versa, when I started knitting, so I was knitting something that I didn't have any of, so like a hat, say I didn't have any knitted hats before I became a knitter. And so I knit a gray one first because I knew that gray would go with all of my coats. And so that's why I'm doing a gray shawl now. So it's a way of kind of making sure that everything coordinates together. And I'm sure that there are lots of ways, but that is the method that has worked for me. And yeah, I really love talking about kind of how to create your personal style and that kind of stuff, so feel free to ask any questions on the thread. And I would also recommend, there's a website called You Look Fab, and they have forums where you can participate. And I used to participate. I haven't in a while because I've been using my kind of internet chatty time for Ravelry and the podcast instead. But you can get feedback if you're trying out new styles, and they talk quite a bit about wardrobe building and that kind of stuff as well. And yeah, so those are my main resources. You will find all the links in the show notes, but I have found that it makes for a very cohesive, well-functioning closet, and I really enjoy it, so works for me. Although I do not have a minimalist closet because I really enjoy getting dressed, and for a long time when I lived in Texas, I didn't really want to be in Texas. So one of my coping mechanisms was thrifting as a hobby, which I feel is fairly low impact as far as coping mechanisms go. And, you know, when you're thrifting, you can pick up silk blouses for like $3. So, yes, I have a generous closet. because I like having clothes in all of my favorite colors, and it turns out I have lots and lots of favorite colors. But it works for me. I certainly don't want it to be any bigger. My limit for me is storage space. So everything is fully at the maximum capacity. So I'm not going to add anything new for a while because I don't want to get rid of anything. Okay, so remember how I said I was going to knit from stash for the rest of the year except for gifts? Well, I have one more stash acquisition, but I contacted the Ravelry member back in December, so it was just with the holidays, it took this long for the yarn to come in, and so, like, this isn't like a violation of my stash approach, it's just kind of catching up. Do you like how I can justify and rationalize that? Okay, so I love this yarn. I was so thrilled to unwrap it. Well, by yarn, I mean the color. Oh, come on, camera. Come on. There we go. Okay, so it's a German yarn, Trekking Pro Natura. It is a wool and bamboo blend, which I find interesting, so no nylon. But basically, I got it because of the color. Such a beautiful color. And apparently the color is 1510. So clearly I really like muted dusty blues, but they can be very difficult to find. And I do not have any blue hand knit socks. So I showed you last week, I found a darker muted blue that I'm very excited about. And meanwhile, in the Solid Socks group, I think November, blue was their theme, and someone posted a pair of socks in the most beautiful pale blue color that was just perfect. And so, of course, I checked out the D-Stash options, and there was one in the same colorway, and I got it for a ridiculous price. I think I paid $6 for it plus $3 for shipping, and the price tag says $20. So this was well worth it for me because I have several blue tops. See, look, it'll go very well with this. And yeah, I really, really love this shade of blue, but it can be tricky buying online because if you add just a little more saturation, then it tends towards more of a baby blue, and I tend to like the more delicate colors. But yeah, so I have not decided on a pattern yet, but I definitely want to do something pretty with this. So let me know if you have any favorite pretty sock yarns or sock patterns. I don't know. I know that I think a more intricate pattern would show up really well since it's a lighter colored yarn. And I made my Kensington socks last year. I call them my Celadon socks, but it was the Kensington pattern out of a lighter jade color. And I really liked how those turned out. So I might be looking at Cookie A patterns. I know she has some beautifully intricate ones. But we'll see. But I'm sure I'll be knitting myself a pair of blue socks with either this or the Cascade Heritage Silk shortly because it's definitely a hole in my sock drawer as far as I like to match my socks to what I'm wearing or contrast. But you know, I like them to be part of my palette even though I'm pretty much the only one that sees them most of the time. And so I totally would have worn light blue ones today to echo my blouse if I had had the option. And I believe that I have talked your ear off long enough. The only thing that I still wanted to say is that there was one of those lovely small world coincidences last week. I found out that one of my best friends from elementary school, Mary, when I went to school in Central Texas, we had so much fun together. And as I've mentioned before, I learned to crochet during that time period. And I actually started a group to teach my friends how to crochet called the Cozy Club. I printed up little cards for us and we got together and crocheted. And so I just found out that she still crochets. She's very into amigurumi, I believe it's the Japanese term for the stuffed animals. And she has a podcast now, a video podcast as well. So I've had a great time catching up with her. Oh man, it fills me with such nostalgia to hear her Central Texan accent. We kind of lost touch after my family moved to England. My father was in the Air Force, so we moved regularly. And so, you know, that was before Facebook and the internet. Well, the internet existed. This was 97 when we moved to England, but, you know, it wasn't the way it is now. So communication, especially international communication, was not as strong. But I am thrilled to be able to catch up with her podcast. Her mom visited my mom, actually, and that's how they mentioned that both of their daughters are fiber obsessed. And so I thought I would let you guys know in case you are interested in amigurumi. She crochets other things too, and she does a bit of knitting too. She's getting into knitting now as well. And she also talks about board games and other nerd-related things, as she puts it. And her video podcast is Farmagurumi. No, that's her Ravelry ID. Now I can't remember the name. I'm sorry, Mary, but I will link it. It's on YouTube. And they tend to be nice short episodes, which I really like, even though I only record long ones because it's easier to fit into my day. So definitely go check her out if you're interested. And yeah, I just thought that was such a great coincidence as far as Small World. And it just fills me with nostalgic joy to hear her talking. It was a really good time in my life. I think small towns are great places to be an elementary school kid. We could bicycle around and climb trees and all that kind of stuff. So with that, I will also mention an audio podcast, and that would be Claire of New Hampshire Knit. She has been around for a lot longer than me, and she is much more well established. But just in case you haven't heard of her, she has a really great audio podcast. I especially like that she includes clips of her with her chickens. So she's in New Hampshire, but she's originally from Scotland, and she has the loveliest voice. And she's so cheerful, and it's just really nice. And I enjoy audio podcasts because I can listen to them when I'm, say, like scrubbing out the bathtub, which you can't really watch a video podcast while you're doing that. And so I'm excited to have her backlog to go to. She said some very kind things about me in her last episode. So thank you, Claire, for that. And yeah, if you have not heard of her, definitely go check her out. As always, everything that I've mentioned will be in show notes, and you can also feel free to ask me questions on the episode thread in the Ravelry group. I love hearing from people. Thanks so much for everyone who's introduced themselves or entered in the giveaway. And I will see you guys next week. Bye! I really need to tape my show notes up to my camera or something because I totally forgot that I wanted to start a new segment, and that is why I talked about wardrobe building this week. So this is at the suggestion of Abby, who is Long Ride Home on Ravelry. And thank you for the suggestion, Abby. Basically, she said she was interested in seeing how I wear my hand knits. And that's something that I'm very interested in as well, is how not only the process of knitting, but how the final products get worked into your everyday life. So a few times on Instagram, I've shared little selfies of what I'm wearing, and I tend to call it Knits in the Wild. So I decided to do that as a segment. And since I have a tripod now, it's a little easier for me to do self-portraits. So I'll be trying to remember to snap photographs of outfits where I'm doing knitwear during the week. And I managed to remember 2 outfits this week. In the wild might be a bit of an exaggeration because I spend most of my time at home. So I thought it would be interesting to take photographs of me wearing my knitwear while I'm doing, the mundane things that I do. And then I also grabbed a more traditional, awkward posing one of each so that you could see the details of the outfit. So I'm going to insert the photos into the video. I used my real camera and not my phone. And then talk so that hopefully you're seeing the photo while I'm talking. So the first outfit is a way that I styled my Sylvan cowl, which I knit out of Juniper Farms Harriet, which is 100% baby alpaca, in the Sycamore colorway, which was one of the natural alpaca colorways. And this is a very large, very warm cowl. I think it took 3 skeins, so almost 300 grams. And I knit it because I was inspired by Claire from the Outlander series. She wears some fabulous statement neckwear in that show. And so I really wanted something similar. And as you can see, this time I styled it with a similarly taupe-colored full skirt because I was going for the kind of 18th century feel that Claire has, since she is actually in the 18th century. And then for the top, I wanted something in a color to kind of break up all the neutrals, and I wanted something that was a little fancier than a t-shirt but still super comfy. So that is how I decided on the blouse that I am wearing. And then for my tights, I decided to echo the blue-greens of the top with my teal tights. I'm also wearing taupe wool tights under them to stay warm. And yeah, as I mentioned, wearing this is essentially the same thing as wearing a cardigan, so it kept me nice and cozy during the day. And then I also managed to snap a photo of my outerwear. Abby said that she mainly knits accessories, so that's what she's especially interested in. A lot of my accessories I just wear in the winter every day with my coats as outerwear. So, and that's a little trickier to photograph because, you know, when you're wearing a big winter coat, you don't want to take the time to set up a camera or anything. But I had my wide angle lens on, so even my short little arms, I could fit my whole head. So as you can see, I wore my Shetland hat, my Winter Woods tan, which was knit out of Shetland yarn, because I thought it went nicely with the cowl. And I wore the mittens that I knit out of the same baby alpaca. So I tend to like to match two things and then alternate the third thing. And I was wearing a big, heavy vintage wool blue coat that day because it was very cold. So I thought that the browns went well with the blue. Obviously, that's a combination I enjoy. My second outfit this week is with my Thistledown sweater, which is the pink sweater I knitted last month. And I took these photos also for the Make Two Along, which was Jenny at Tiny Paper Foxes, her current knit along, which is to create two things that you wear together as an outfit. So I knit myself the pink sweater and then the matching pink socks, which are This Little Piggy socks. I showed them to you last week as a finished object. And as soon as the weather cooled off, I wore that outfit right away. I knit this pink sweater as a jumper so that it would be something that I could just pull on in the mornings when I need to walk Thistle and it's cold out and I don't want to think. So I put in quite a bit of waist shaping because I tend to wear my woolen trousers when in that situation because I want to be nice and warm and they're easy to pull on. And since they're all vintage, they tend to have a bit more volume, especially in the hip area. So I think that having a more defined waist balances them out. And yeah, I really like how the pink socks add another touch to the outfit. And as you can see, I modeled on my couch because I spend a lot of time on couches and chairs, and so yeah, outfits that look good while sitting are always a plus. And there you have it. Those are the photographs that I have for this week. Do let me know if you want this to be a regular feature or not. I thought I would try it out, but it also feels really kind of funny. I hope you don't think I'm being vain. For me, it's not about what I'm wearing. It's about how knitwear works in a wardrobe. So if you find it useful, please let me know and I will continue. I will be snapping some photos of my favorite hat, mitten, neckwear combinations with the various coats that I have. I will remember to do that next week, Abby. Not modeled, just on their own, so that you can see how I enjoy mixing and matching. A lot of times, most of the people that I interact with only see me in my coat and outerwear, so it's fun to have a variety of things so that I'm not wearing the same thing every day. Plus, I just like knitting hats, let's be honest. So, that is the new Knits in the Wild feature. I really hope that you guys appreciate the spirit with which I shared it in, and let me know if you find it useful or if I should not do it or ever speak of it again. Once again, have a great week. I hope you have a lot of fun knitting. And now for real, I'm going to say goodbye and I will see you next week.